Hello and welcome to OurGame Thursday with myself, Shane Stapleton, and our dream team here, Ciaran, CAREY and Richie Power. How are you doing, lads? To start off with you, Ciaran.
I'm good, Shane. Good to see you. Good to see you, Richie.
How are you doing, lads? Are you well?
Absolutely flying it. Well, I suppose as flying it as a Tipperary man can be after last weekend's defeat, but there's only one place to start, Ciaran. Another dominant performance by Limerick, eventually just swatting Cork away.
Yeah, and I suppose you'll be asking a few questions. And you don't want to be too hard or critical either, because everybody in the field is doing their best and on the line are doing their best. And you have to ask the question, like, are Cork learning from the occasions they're playing Limerick? Are they really fine-combing what Limerick are doing? What do we need to do ourselves to prevent the machine from coming? And there was definitely glimpses in the second half where I'm kind of a lot more confident now that you kind of see that the machine is coming and just needs to be oiled a small bit more. And no matter what way you look at the results, it was still 11 to 12 points higher than that Cork got. And I remember watching Cork last year, and I'm just thinking of one player, Jack O'Connor. He was playing against Kilkenny, and he was half forward. And anytime he was on the ball, it was like watching Usain Bolt. There was no one catching him. So you have to be saying, where has he gone from that time to now? Because he's going to be a serious threat. Yeah, Cork have to ask themselves an awful lot of questions, but from a Limerick point of view, yeah, and I suppose the league is put to bed now. First game out of the way, getting rid of the cobwebs, and you can see glimpses of the old Limerick definitely with that performance last week.
Yeah, Richie, what was your take on it? I mean, I suppose you talked about some of the question marks in terms of who should even start in the full back line for Cork, but was it just that, or where were the problems for Cork?
I think, Shane, there was problems all over the field, to be honest. And as Ciaran touched on there, Cork didn't learn anything from last year's All-Ireland final, and that's what really shocked me looking at the game over the weekend. Was they went back to the same tactics, they went back to the same game plan, and never switched it. And even when things were going against them, they never deviated from it. And even though you could hear in the commentary that there was acres of space inside to deliver a fast ball, give it into the guys inside, and maybe they turn something up. Like you saw what they done in the first minute, like when they ran at Limerick. That was the only time they done it in the game, and I was absolutely shocked. And I did mention last week on the show that I did maybe feel that if you got at the Limerick full back line, or the Limerick full back line, that there may be goals in the game for Cork, but Cork never materialised. They never took advantage of that. And I'd say Ciaran Kingston, Diarmuid O'Sullivan, and these guys, they have to take a lot of the responsibility for the performance at the weekend and the game plan and the tactics that they came with, because it was exactly the same as last year's All-Ireland final and exactly the same result.
Yeah. Is there anything? What can Cork do from here, Ciaran? I've heard talk of a players' meeting. This sort of stuff generally comes out after a team shipped a heavy defeat. Can Ciaran Kingston do anything different with these type of players, or hope to go with the same thing and do it better?
Well, from my point of view, from the outside, looking at Cork the last 2 or 3 years, you're saying, and they're on about, the buzzword in the Premier League with Manchester City United and Liverpool, scouting, and scouting is spotting a player, spotting their potential, and seeing the credentials what to have as an inter-county player. Cork have buckets of those. And I have a funny feeling, I could be wrong, I could be right, I have a funny feeling, when you're overloading players with so much information, and I suppose turning them into kind of robotic on the field, you're probably taken from their natural ability. And, they're a team that strikes me, they have buckets of ability. And I suppose you just want to utilise that and probably get the balance, allow them to hurl with fluency. And obviously then the big one is kind of protection on top of that. And I think they're probably caught between a rock and a hard place, trying to find or implement the correct formula that suits Cork hurling. And, Richie touching it there, there wasn't a glove laid on a Limerick player. But any time at the start, Cork kind of asked questions, put Limerick on the back foot, to put them under a small bit of pressure. But when the opposite was done with Limerick players, the 15 and 20 yards of space, I don't want to sound hard and hash, which was hard, but it was like a training session for Limerick in the second half. With so much time on the ball. Gerard Hegarty on the ball, saw him 15 yards, pop over the bar. Declan Hannon, your centre back, coming up to the opponent centre back, getting the ball over the bar. untouched. And I suppose these are the basics really in intercounty hurling.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? Sean Flynn did some great stats, former tip statsman and hurling coach, talking about making the short puck out successful, because we see all teams doing it, but it's about retaining it at the top end of the field and making something from it. So this is from last weekend's televised games. Limerick had 18 short puck outs. 13 of them resulted in possession in the opposition's half, 72%. Look at Cork down there. They had 23 short, retained just 5 of them at the opposite end of the field. And Richie, I'll just throw this to you, but I just wanted to show the difference in terms of what Nicky Quaid is looking at when he's striking a ball out the field. Obviously, this is just one moment in time. It can be different at other times. But if you look across the line there, that Cork forward line is all in such a small area there. They're not really covering back in front of the Limerick forwards, who've done that thing where you fold into the middle and then there's just acres of space either side. And when the ball goes short, they're not pressing up either. So they're just caught in no man's land doing nothing really, I would say, which is why Limerick were able to go short 14 times and 14 times collected. And then they were able to do something with it because there was no pressure either coming at them or back to where the ball should be going. Contrast this with Patrick Collins. Again, just one moment in time. He has 4 along the full back line, and he can play it to them. But then you have to have good lines of hard running to actually puncture out the field and, get on the front foot. But if you look at the other end of the field, the forwards are just spread out lovely. If you're a back, Richie, you're absolutely loving that.
Absolutely, Shane. And you saw in the first clip you done there of the Cork forwards, how in sync were those 6 guys? So to go back to the previous one. So look at where they are. That's where they're being told to stand. It's not thinking on your feet, and it's not covering the space or trying to kind of close the gap between the Limerick full back line and the full forward line. That's so static where they are. And that's a dream for Nicky Quaid, to be honest, because he can pick out his men. And then obviously Limerick have the runners coming off the shoulder and they're well able to break the tackle because they're big men. Whereas you look at the other one, you're right, it's a defender's dream. But so I can't understand, Limerick can do it both ways. They can go short and go long. We saw at the weekend, Gearóid Hegarty caught a couple of balls under the puck out. Ciaran Lynch is very good in the air. So they have that in their armour. Whereas Cork, if the short game is not working, they've no ball winners on the half-forward line, unfortunately. Shane Barrett's a good hurler. Seamus Harnedy is very good. Conor Cahalan. But these guys aren't 6'2", 6'3", or 6'4". They've no target men up there. So really, they can't deviate from the short passing game. Because, as I said, the likes of Diarmaid Burns, Declan Hannon, these guys are going to absolutely wipe up high balls if Cork end up going long. So I think Cork need to look at their team and probably their personnel and look and see if there is 1 or 2 ball winners in the panel, and to kind of maybe have a look at these guys, because as I said, short running game is not going to work against Limerick, and I say that for every team, and I've no doubt Watford will try it at the weekend. But when you're running into Gearóid Hegarty, Tom Morrissey and Ciaran Lynch, you're not going to break a tackle and you're not going to be able to give the offload.
Yeah, Ciaran, I was looking at the first half just there again, and I was looking at how much the two teams were doing stick passes versus hand passes. And, both teams are pretty similar. Cork did 22 hand passes, 31 stick passes. Limerick did 22 versus 30. So it's very, very similar. But it just seemed to be that Cork, too often, they did stick passes in tight areas. It got themselves turned over. If you think early on, Darragh Fitzgibbon was turned over twice, and both times stick passes had been given to him in tight areas, which put him under pressure. It's so much harder to control a stick pass than a lovely little pop pass into your stride. So to me, there's a different way to carry the ball through Limerick, and that's through the hands rather than trying to do stick passes and putting yourself under pressure.
Yeah, but the only thing with Darragh Fitzgibbon or Melrick, when they're in the middle third, in the middle of the field, it was evident a lot last week, and I suppose you're not going to give it in unless you see a runner. And if you're looking at grass and there's no Cork player running or kind of showing that desire or hunger to go out there and get it, then obviously you have to hold possession. And then you're thinking on your feet. And I suppose that's when the unforced errors seem to happen, probably at the quickest. And, I was amazed at that Cork inside line. They weren't actually really showing for enough of the ball. There was a lot of space there, and the kind of, and the desire wasn't there. And when the desire and hunger isn't there, then you're in the middle of the field. They're not half back. Then they're saying, we've no choice but to try go short. But, you know, and I suppose that's a skill in itself, Shane. You know, if you're going to go short, you have to nail it and you have to be extremely accurate. Because most unforced errors now at inter-county hurling, every one of them are going to be penalised. And Cork made a lot of them there last week.
They certainly did. So it's going to be Limerick at home to Watford this weekend. And since John Kiley became Limerick manager, they've faced Watford in 5 senior hurling championship times. And they've won 5 by a cumulative 59 points. So that's kind of like 12 points a game, more or less, Richie. Did you see enough from Watford at the weekend? I mean, obviously Limerick were brilliant, but did you see enough? Have you seen enough from Watford to suggest that they can claw that back, that they could potentially win this game?
Did I see enough from at the weekend? No, but did I see enough from over the course of the league? Yeah. You know, I do think they were very, very lucky at the weekend. You know, Tipperary, I've no doubt will be going home thinking that it was an opportunity missed. But certainly I don't see it being a 12-point game on Saturday night. You know, because I think Waterford they found some new players, they've positioned players in certain positions with Limerick in mind. Which I think will lead to some great matchups on Saturday night. So I suppose the one thing I did take from Limerick's performance at the weekend was I said it last week. I fully believe they were going to come and set a marker on Sunday, which they did. I was very impressed with them, and if anything, they look stronger, because I thought Mike Casey was absolutely outstanding at fullback, coming back from the injury hell he's been through. And you know, for any team that's in a position to move an all-star wing back for 2 years to the edge of the square, you know, just shows the strength in the Limerick setup. So for me, I think they're actually, you know, looking like a little bit stronger than last year. But I do believe Watford are a good bit stronger than last year as well. You know, Shane Bennett is probably in the form of his life. Desi Hutchinson has shown flashes of brilliance after Ballygunner's, you know, great victory. And then as I mentioned there, you know, Jack Fagan going back to wing back, you know, for me, that is a sole position change in order to mark the road Hegarty. You know, and I when I saw it in the league, I believed that was Liam Cahill's thinking. Tyg de Burke back is a huge bonus for Watford. You know, and I just think it's set up nicely. You know, you had Jamie Barron coming back from injury at the weekend, Austin Gleeson coming on and you know, putting in a good shift as well. So I think it's set up for a real rip-roaring game Saturday night, and I definitely don't see it being a 12-point game like previous meetings, Shane. And I'm really looking forward to this one now, because this will show us exactly where Watford are. You know, I know where Limerick are at, and I think John Kiley will be very, very happy after the weekend. But I think this is a real test for Watford early on in the season to see where their All-Ireland credentials are. Yeah,
does this game excite you, Ciaran?
It does, yeah, and Richie nailed it there. And I suppose the big one here is, you know, Liam Cahill, you know, he's done a serious job with Waterford, and I suppose he doesn't need any reminding that Limerick have given them a toss in the last 4 or 5 occasions that they've played them. And I suppose the worrying aspect for me, the last few occasions that they've actually played Limerick, they actually tried to beat them the same way each time. So the one thing Saturday night that I will be looking out for, how are they going to set up? And, you know, Richie said it there, even by moving young Fagan back, half back. Prendergast at centre forward as well now is a very dangerous player, and, you know, has serious pins, and is exactly what Waterford need. You know, they need to kind of ask questions of Limerick and take them on. But, you know, it'll be interesting. Last week was good for Limerick. You can see they're coming. Cathal Neal came on, 2 great points. Reedy came on, 1 great score. Pat Ryan came on, and, you know, I was really taken back by Pat Ryan. He looks very comfortable now, meaning, you know, I would think twice to bring him on. He's a serious set of pins. And, you know, I suppose both benches are extremely strong now, and Waterford showed that last week as well. So the bench will be huge Saturday night. And I suppose Waterford probably will have to come to change something up. Limerick will come with something similar as they did against Waterford the last 4 or 5 occasions. They ain't going to change a thing. If anything, they'll probably improve their performance from last week. That's what I'd be expecting. And I suppose the big question mark then is for Watford. Will Watford be able to maintain it? And will they be able to kind of stop them and stunt their probably process, and I suppose try implement what they're trying to do?
Okay, we're going to be talking plenty more about this game and all the other games, not to mention the Gaelic football with Stephen MacDonald. But if you want to see the rest of that, go to patreon.com/OurGame.